Finally, the truth we've all been waiting for regarding the Port Shepstone cocaine looting has been exposed. Brigadier Nyuswa has just declared that the looting of the cocaine at the storage facility was an inside job. He mentioned 2 names. The moment those names were mentioned, everyone was left shocked because the same officers he named had already testified at the Madlanga Commission, but instead of telling the truth, they lied throughout to cover themselves. These officers must be thrown in jail. One of the men he mentioned is a highly respected officer. Stay tuned because we must expose these criminals in police uniform. If you appreciate the work the Madlanga Commission is doing, please hit the like button, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. Tell us in the comments section, who do you truly suspect as the mastermind behind this looting? Jabulani, roll the clip.
Yes, sir. I don't know if I understand the comment.
Let's read your first sentence. Let's read paragraph 18. It was not unusual for the provincial commanders to be based at the provincial office, although the preference is to be based where your team is based. So that last part, where your team is based, gives me the distinct impression that you are able to say that a team is based at such and such a place. Do you follow me thus far?
I follow you, Commissioner.
Yes. Now, and you say, once the 2 brigadiers who competed for the provincial headship with General Senona, once they had retired,
Yes.
their replacements were then placed where their teams were based. Am I correct thus far?
You're correct, Commissioner.
Yes. So,
all those teams,
Yes.
sorry to come in, all those teams are based in Durban but not in provincial office.
they are based in Durban.
Yes.
All right. So, and your team, you say your team is based where?
I've got one team that is also in Durban.
In Durban.
Yes.
All right. Does that mean you have another team elsewhere?
Yes, Commissioner, but I was still...
Okay, all right. I'll leave it. Thank you, Brigadier. I think you were to start at paragraph 19.
In September or October 23, a prominent businessman from Watubuza was kidnapped. Captain Enoch was the investigating officer and Lieutenant Colonel Govender was the head of the tracing team. The members work on this case. At some point, I realized that I was not kept up to date with the progress of the investigation. I called Captain Enoch. He's now a lieutenant colonel. That's why I keep on mistaking the investigating officer, and I inquired why I was not being updated. And he told me that the team was reporting direct to the General Senona. I told him that I still expected to be kept informed, even if they were reporting to General Senona. Following the investigation, 2 Mozambican nationals and a policeman were arrested relating to kidnapping. One of the suspects was Mr. Nangi. The NPA took the decision to withdraw the case against the suspect and lodge a complaint to DPCI head office regarding the manner in which the investigation was handled. General Senona, Lieutenant Colonel Govender, other member, and I were charged for misconduct, and the disciplinary proceedings are not yet finalized. Apart from the above disciplinary action and the precautionary suspension relating to Port Shepstone, I do not have any other disciplinary matters.
What were you charged with in connection with the kidnapping investigations?
The misconduct was that we failed to manage the case. As a result of that, it was withdrawn by the NPA, because NPA also wrote a letter, a complaint to head office stating the reason why the matter was withdrawn.
Yes, please continue.
Thank you. Serious organized crime section duties as a provincial commander. My duties, amongst others, are to ensure that project and major investigations are conducted by serious organized crime sections against identified individuals, so-called high flyers and criminal groupings and syndicates. The Serious Organized Crime section has 3 sections, namely Serious Organized Crime Unit, Crimes Against the States, CATS, and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission section, TRC. TRC is staffed by contract workers, members that are retired and apply again as contract members. In Soki, there are 3 units, namely, I should say sections in Soki. There is a National Priority Violent Crime, NPVC, South African Narcotic Enforcement Bureau, SANAP, and Economic Protected Resources. Each unit has a unit commander and a team leader. The team leader reports to the unit commander, who reports to me as the provincial commander. In KZN, there are 5 Soki units. There's one in Durban, Port Shepstone, Pietermaritzburg, Richards Bay, and Newcastle. Sign-up Caesar on the 22nd of June 2021. On the 22nd of June 2021, I was on duty when I received a call from Warrant Officer Mpangase from the SANAP section. He reports to Lieutenant Kenneth Jacob, who was the SANAP team leader at the time. He is now a unit commander of the same unit, Durban. Warrant Officer Mpangase informed me that he was contacted by crime intelligence regarding suspected drug in a shipping container at Isipingo. He told me that he was attending the operation with Lieutenant Kenneth Jacob and Warrant Officer Spear. Also, Warrant Officer Spear is a member of Soki, but at that time, 4 EPR unit. There was nothing unusual about the call because members would call me about operation that they were busy with or attending to. I am not the direct reporting line for these members. They reported to Kenneth Roma, who at the time was a former retiree who had been offered a short-term contract. As stated, Lieutenant Kenneth Jacob was the SANAP team leader, but he was also a EPR team leader. Whereas my expertise was murder and robbery and police murders, Lieutenant Kenneth Jacob's expertise was drugs investigation. When I joined as the provincial commander of Soki in 2020 August, Lieutenant Kenneth Jacob was already in SANAP. In fact, he is a former DSO member. And when he came to the police, he was already working at SANAP. In June 2021, we had been working together for 10 months. I relied on him as the SANAP team leader. Drug investigation were not within my area of expertise. And even now, later that morning,
Sorry, Brigadier. Can you just explain or clarify the reporting relationship between Colonel Jacob, yourself, and Colonel Lomo? How did it work?
Thank you, Commissioners. Colonel Jacob is supposed to report to Colonel Lomo, and Colonel Lomo will in turn report to me. That's a lie.
Okay, thank you.
Later that morning, I received a call from Lieutenant Colonel Jacob informing me that the team searched a container at Isipingo container tap and found 27 black bag containing bricks suspected to be cocaine. I told Colonel Jacob to ensure that all necessary and relevant aids were called to the crime scene. I did not have to tell him this because he is a well-experienced investigator, but it was just something I said at the time during the conversation. Thereafter, I called General Senona to inform him of the discovery, and I told him I would update him. A while later, perhaps shortly after noon, Lieutenant Colonel Jacob called me and told me that the team encountered a problem at Isipingo, who would not allow the exhibit to be stored at Isipingo police station. He also told me that he had exhausted all of it. By this, I understood him to mean that he had contacted the nearby police station to store the exhibit and had been unsuccessful. I told him I will try to find space somewhere and I'll call him back. I contacted Brigadier Maluleka and Colonel Nyuswa of the Forensic Science Laboratory in Amazimtoti to find out if they had space to store the exhibit. I do not recall if I got hold of Brigadier Maluleka or if I did. And he may have told me to call Colonel Nyuswa, but I do recall speaking to Colonel Nyuswa late afternoon. I asked her if FSL had a space to store the exhibit, and she said they did not. I was not aware that Lieutenant Colonel Jacob had also called FSL because he did not tell me. He only said that he had exhausted all avenues, and to me, that just meant the police, the local police station.
Brigadier, where is Colonel Zomo in all this process? I understood that in your response to Commissioner Baloyi, you said Colonel Jacob reported to Colonel Zomo. But here he's now calling you directly and you are taking all these steps. Where is his immediate supervisor in all this process?
I understand, commissioners. He was at the office, but he was never consulted because I think they felt that he did not know much about the operational matters because he was a retiree coming back to work again.
What confuses me is you emphasize that you are not the direct line. They don't report to you. They report to Colonel Zomo. But now it seems like on this matter, they did not regard Colonel Zomo as somebody they should speak to. You were there for the purposes of this operation. You were, in fact, the person they reported to.
I admit, the commissioners. I think I'm in 31. I then remembered that when I was the unit commander at Port Shepstone, the premises had 2 strong room safe. What made the property attractive for the DPCI was that the landlord had informed us that those safes could not be breached. They could only be accessed with the key. I was aware of the security lapse at the premises, such as the alarm not working after load shedding, but my main focus was the safe that could be used since it was very secure and could only be accessed with the key. I was also aware that hashish compressed dachau was stored in one of the safe until it was disposed of without any problem. Commissioner, I must also mention that this hashish was from Durban Organized Crime Unit. The investigating officer then was Captain Kopalsami. And I was still a unit commander when it was brought. In 2018, all men tablets were seized at the large clandestine laboratories in Harding and was stored in the same safe until exhibit were disposed of without incident. I called General Senona and informed him of the dilemma and suggested a strong room at Port Shepstone premises. He agreed and instructed me to instruct the acting unit commander at Port Shepstone, Lieutenant Colonel Princeton, to prepare the safe for the exhibit. General Senona also instructed me to instruct Lieutenant Colonel Princeton to get the spare key to the safe from the supply chain management. Thereafter, I called Lieutenant Colonel Princeton and instructed him to prepare the safe. I also contacted Lieutenant Colonel Jacob and informed him of the arrangement and told him to liaise with Lieutenant Colonel Princeton. General Senona also instructed me to arrange for the provincial tracking team to escort the investigators from Isipingo to Port Shepstone DPCI Soki, which I did. A while later, at approximately 1500 hours, General Senona instructed me to go with him to Isipingo to oversee the operation. I did not think this was untoward because it is a big drug bust and the senior leadership, he wanted to oversee the operation. We drove with my car, and as we were approaching Isipingo, we contacted the team, but they informed us that they were already on their way to Port Shepstone offices. We changed course and headed to Port Shepstone. Upon arrival, the exhibit had already been placed in the strong room, and I could see that they were still in their 27 black bags. Warrant Officer Mpangase and Sbiya were present. I asked Warrant Officer Mpangase why the exhibit were not in the exhibit bags. He informed me that Isipingo SAPS did not have exhibit bag, but that the exhibit were entered into the Isipingo SAPS and booked out again. This was a concern for me because as an investigator, I knew that the chain of custody must be preserved. However, since I was informed by Warrant Officer Mpangase that Warrant Officer Mpangase had remained with the exhibit throughout, the chain of custody was preserved. I accept now that once the team left the crime scene without the exhibit being placed in the exhibit bag, the evidence was already compromised. However, at the time, I told Warrant Officer Mpangase to ensure that the exhibit are placed in the bags and entered into the SAP-13 to preserve the integrity of the evidence. The strong room was locked, and the General Senona asked that both set of keys, original and spare keys, be given to him. Warrant Officer Mpangase gave both set of keys to General Senona in my presence. At the time, it made sense to me that the provincial head should take the keys because this was a big drug bust, and who better to have ownership and responsibility over the keys than the provincial head, especially since the safe could not be accessed without the keys. The following day, 23rd of June 2021, General Senona called me and told me that to inform Lieutenant Colonel Princeton that Warrant Officer Mpangase will be going to the strong room to take samples of the exhibit. I called Lieutenant Princeton and relayed the message. I was not sure why the sample will be taken because it is not my area of expertise, but I knew that Warrant Officer Mpangase, the investigating officer, will have to place the exhibit in the exhibit bag and book the exhibit into the SAP-13. I had no further involvement with the exhibit because it was the investigating officer responsibility to ensure that the exhibits make their way to the FSL and that the investigation is finalized so that the exhibit...
Now here's what happened. Warrant Officer Mpangase called him to inform him about a big container of cocaine seized in Isipingo. They tried to use other facilities to store the cocaine, but everyone they called kept giving one excuse or another. He then decided to store the cocaine at Port Shepstone. He said that before taking that step, he had already communicated with General Senona, who gave his approval. But here's something I want to point out to all of you. He admitted that they both knew Port Shepstone had security issues, but they decided to store the drugs there anyway. I mean, how can you be that careless? That's the point where his testimony started crumbling. Secondly, he also revealed that when the drugs were brought to Port Shepstone, he discovered they had already been tampered with. Yet he didn't raise any alarm because he trusted Warrant Officer Mpangase. Did you hear how foolish that sounds? He saw the red flag when the drugs arrived but chose to keep his mouth shut. This looks like a cover-up. Then after everything, he said the keys to the storage room were handed over to General Senona. Now I want you to mark this name, because what this officer revealed in the next clip will surprise you. He revealed that the drugs were stored in a safe inside the Port Shepstone office, and that only the senior officers involved knew where the safe was. Remember, the keys were now with General Senona. Now Jabulani, play the clip.
In July 2021, my vacation leave was cut short by the widespread civil unrest. General Senona informed me that General Lebiya wanted me to come back to deal with the civil unrest, which I did, given my experience in CATS. I headed the CATS team, tasked with the identifying the instigators of crime and working closely with the Director of Public Prosecution Office. I will give General Senona regular progress report in the investigation. I was working with the CATS team on daily basis. I had very little involvement in other cases at this time. I must also add here, Commissioner, that as a result of these cases, Head Office also gave us 4 members from the provinces which were not affected by this civil unrest. We had a sergeant from Eastern Cape, a sergeant from Limpopo, a warrant officer from Free State, and a lieutenant colonel from Northern Cape. These members, they remain in KwaZulu-Natal until the latter part of 2023 because these cases were very, very, very hard to solve. It wasn't like a daily crime that we were solving. We were going through the data, looking at the messages that the people had posted. There were emojis, and us as police officers, we didn't know what the interpretation of the emojis. I had to go to CSIR, the security section department of them, and asked the head to interpret, to find someone to interpret the emojis, and they assisted us. There were a lot of other things. We had to get the social media experts to give their expert opinion on what data that we have found. And we were working very closely with the DPP, and we were reporting on daily basis to the national head. The meeting will start at 4 o'clock and we'll finish whenever we finish. It included NPA, DPCI, General Detective, as well as Crime Intelligence. And we will also get the tasking from that meeting. The theft. Sometimes late in October 21, while I was on leave, I received a call from Lieutenant Colonel Prinsloo, who informed me that there was an attempted breaking at Port Shepstone DPCI premises. For the first time, he voiced concern about the safety of the suspected cocaine exhibit in the strong room. Although I was too concerned, I thought the drugs will be safe because General Senona had the keys and the safe could not be breached, and certainly not without being detected.
And what do you mean for the first time? Can you just explain that?
Because when I called him the first time to arrange the space, he never raised any concern to me about the security of the building. But when
Of the building?
Of the building, as well as the safes.
If I'm correct, when he testified, I think he showed us several items of communication in which he communicated that the building was not safe, at least the building.
Yes.
The state of the alarm system and several other issues around the security of the building. And in this regard, he was communicating with the head office in Durban, if my recollection of the testimony is correct.
That's correct.
So your reference to the security of the open quote building, close quote, is at variance with what he said. And as I say, he actually showed us the items of communication. So your first cannot, subject to what you say, correctly relate to the building.
Yes, Commissioner. When I called him the first time, he never raised those concerns. And I'm saying now, then when there was this attempted, he then said to me, he's got his concern about the safety of the exhibit.
All right, thank you.
I called Lieutenant Kenneth Jacob.
Sorry, before you carry on, does that mean your answer? Does it mean you never became aware that there were concerns, not necessarily relating to these exhibits, but concerns about the security of in that building until there was a theft? You never became aware of that?
Commissioners, I was aware. The breaches that were there were not directed at the safe, were directed at the offices, and the safes are at the in the very private space. Only members of the DPCI and employees will know where the safes are, not any private person. It was out of sight, and is still out of sight.
Thank you.
Sorry, Brigadier. So just to clarify, what you're saying is you knew about the concerns, the safety issues at the time that you suggested the Port Shepstone premises be used to store the drugs. But when you suggested it and it was approved by General Senona and you communicated that to Prince Lou, he didn't at that stage say to you, but there's a problem with the safety of this premises. That's what you mean?
That's what I'm trying to
Okay, but you were aware of it?
I was aware.
And then where you say, still in that paragraph 39, Brigadier, where you say I too was concerned, I thought the drugs would be safe because General Senona had the keys and the safe could not be breached and certainly not without being detected. It's this last part that I want to understand when you say certainly not without being detected. What are you speaking to there?
I think I'll still come to that because during my time when I was there, the landlord, there was a space that the state was not renting. And the landlord will come during the working hours and we will have this talk with him and about the safe and everything. He will tell me how secure those safes are and that those safes can never be accessed without the key.
Yes. Sorry, what I'm trying to understand is when you say without being detected, is it that there was a mechanism about the safe that would raise alarm when you say it could not be breached without being detected, what would happen that would cause alertness that the safe is being breached?
There was no alertness. I consider it's error on my part.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
I'm not sure that it's clear to me what you mean by detection without being detected. What exactly do you may have explained in response to Commissioner Baloyi, but what exactly do you have in mind when you say without being detected?
Commissioner, as I said that the safes were out of the public eyes and only DPCI members and employees will know.
I hope this will not sound as if I'm probing, but seeing that you were aware that there were security concerns about, certainly about the building itself, so that should mean that as a result of those, or rather, those concerns stemmed from foreseen possibilities that the building could be broken into. Am I understanding the situation correctly?
At that moment, commissioners.
I'm talking about the building now, not the safes.
Yes.
So you agreed to?
Yeah, I do agree.
Yes. Now, if once somebody had broken into the building, they would then have all the time in the world to explore the building, not so?
It's true, commissioners.
And in so exploring the building, they could easily, or if not easily, eventually find the safe or safes, correct?
It's true, commissioners, but also in that building, there are other very important documents.
Yeah, I'm just focusing on the safes and your point about and your point that it would not be easy to detect the safes. I've just established now if somebody has broken into the building and once inside they have time to walk around and that they may eventually find the safes. You have agreed to that.
I agree, but also,
yes,
Commissioner, I want to add, there were two safes next to one another.
Yes.
And outside, how will you know which safe contains what?
Let's just leave it. Your point was about detection, not any other issues, and I was just engaging you on detection, and you've agreed that eventually, once somebody had broken in, they could find the safes. I've established that. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Brigadier, I just want to take it a step further from what Chair is saying. You specifically say that your understanding was that the safe could not be breached and certainly not without being detected, meaning that if it was going to be breached or an attempt was going to be made to breach it, the person would be detected. You would be able to detect them whilst they are in the process of trying to breach the safe without the key. Because we want to understand what do you mean in that sentence where you say the safe could not be breached and certainly not without being detected. So is it they being detected in the process of the breach?
Yes, Commissioner.
So you're saying even if the person makes it to the safe, you would be able to detect them while they're in the process of trying to breach the safe. We just want to understand what do you
mean? From now, what I've seen, it was not possible.
It wasn't possible. What wasn't possible?
It was impossible to detect them. As I'm saying, I concede this is an error.
Okay, thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Commissioners. I called Lieutenant Jacob and told him to speed up the investigation, speed up the finalization of the investigation in order for the exhibit to be sent to FSL for destruction. If I recall correctly, Lieutenant Colonel Jacob told me that he went to Amazimdoti FSL, but that they needed more samples. They informed him that they needed more samples and still did not have space for the exhibit. Lieutenant Colonel Jacob also informed me that he contacted FSL in Pretoria to ascertain if they had space, but they did not. I also called Major General Senona and informed him about the attempted breaking at Port Shepstone DPCI SOC. I did this because, as a provincial head, he needed to know about the security breaches in the DPCI offices and the fact that he had the keys to the safe. I further told him that I informed Lieutenant Colonel Jacob to speed up the investigation. The local elections were held on the 1st of November 2021. I was posted in Herikwala district to perform election duties in Kokstad. On the 2nd of November 2021, on my way back home, I stopped by the Margate police station and Port Shepstone DPCI offices. At the DPCI offices, I met with Lieutenant Colonel Prinsloo and Lieutenant Colonel Mchali. Lieutenant Colonel Mchali was the new team leader for NPVC at Port Shepstone, appointed in September 2021 from Gauteng province. We had a brief meeting and I left the office. I mention this because I have been informed that General Senona took issue that the fact that Lieutenant Colonel Prinsloo did not mention this meeting during his testimony at the commission. I am not sure why Lieutenant Colonel Prinsloo will not have mentioned this meeting, or why not mentioning the meeting is something of concern.
Please reread that. I don't think you read what's on there. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure why Lieutenant Prinsloo would have to mention this meeting, or why not mentioning the meeting is something of concern.
Continue.